you set a goal for yourself, and the goal might be lofty, right? You want to be a self-supporting professional artist. Then every day when you get up, if you think about your goal and you think, well, what's one thing I could do today? The smallest little thing, it doesn't matter. What's that one thing I could do today to move me in that direction? And that should be one of your top priorities. And you should do that before you get sucked into the rest of your day.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold. Brush! My name is Laura Arango-Bayer, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips, specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. For today's episode, we sat down with Scott Ruthven, a landscape painter from Colorado who transitioned from a high-tech business career to becoming a full-time artist after rediscovering his passion for painting. He emphasizes the importance of painting from life, particularly through plein air work, which helped him develop his observational skills and capture the nuances of light and landscape. Scott's journey involved building his art business gradually, selling directly to collectors, and maintaining a professional approach that includes goal setting, consistent communication, and nurturing relationships with art enthusiasts. He advises aspiring artists to paint frequently, start small, avoid overwhelming themselves, and focus on creating authentic work that resonates with their personal vision. He also tells us about the power of the one thing that artists can be doing daily to get closer to meeting their goals. Finally, Scott tells us about his upcoming workshops and exhibitions, including a plein air event in Redstone, Colorado, and the Colorado Governor's Show at the Loveland Museum. Welcome, Scott, to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you because, of course, I'm very interested, first of all, in your absolutely gorgeous work. I really love how you capture, especially in your plein air paintings and also in your studio paintings, you really capture that freshness of the day. There's just something so beautifully fresh in your work that I can just stare at all day long. So I'm excited about that, and I'm also excited about hearing about your background because you have some amazing tips I'm really excited to hear about. So yeah, so I'm honored.
Well, thank you so much. That's a nice compliment. It's really
Yeah,
what
of
I strive
course.
for in the work.
Yes, and it shows. It truly shows. But of course, before we dive into all of the delicious fun stuff, do you mind telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Scott Ruthven, and I'm a landscape painter. I live here in Fort Collins, Colorado, with my wife. I've got 4 adult kids, and I'm really a student of Mother Nature. I paint outdoors year-round here in Colorado, and that's the beginning of my work. I love to paint plein air and study Mother Nature.
Awesome. Yeah, and it shows. And of course, like you said, you're a student of Mother Nature, and I find that that should be the case for every artist because there's little that we can do without the visual evidence that the world around us gives us about how the world works, and that's how we can translate it onto our images. So makes
Right.
perfect sense. Yeah,
Mother Nature has all the answers for me. I don't have to make it up.
exactly. Yeah, all the clues are there, which of course is, it's important for that reason to paint from life. I know some people maybe can't, but painting from life is such a treasure. And of course you do the hardcore version, which is plein air, which I'm perpetually saying on this podcast how terrified I am of it and how I'll try it one day, but I'm still procrastinating on that.
You just got to get out there.
Yeah,
Baby steps.
baby steps. Yes, absolutely. And actually, I wanted to dive more into your past because, of course, your work now absolutely gorgeous and it started somewhere. So, do you mind also telling us about how you began your path of the artist?
Sure. I, I started, I've always felt that I was an artist, right? And went through high school, I was, in the art room all the time and doing the independent study stuff. And I started college for art here at Colorado State University, and I enjoyed it, but I got to a point where I realized I'm going to have to pay the bills, and there wasn't a clear path that I could see there for earning a living afterward. So I started to get take some business classes, knowing that I would, in the arts, I'd have to promote myself anyway. And that really turned into a full-blown business degree. So I switched my major halfway through worked my butt off to catch up and still graduate on time, but I ended with a business degree. And, the benefit of that was that I did get a job right out of college, um, working for Hewlett Packard at the time in high tech. And that was great, but it didn't leave any time for art. And so for the next 20 plus years, 20 something, I focused on that pretty much. Well, somewhere in that, toward the end of that 20 years, I went to a gallery show in Denver and had an epiphany that I needed to paint because I had this desire in me to try that. And I hadn't painted in oils before, but I just saw the work and I thought, I really think if I put my mind to it, I could maybe paint toward this level that I'm seeing here. And, that was naive too. I was at the bottom of that learning curve. But the desire was there. In your cells, all of your cells, that you're an artist, and that's what you're supposed to do. We all need to pay our rent and put food on the table too. So, I made that trade-off, but at that point in my life, I really missed the creativity side of it. And what I realized too is that I was using creativity in a lot of other ways in my life. Building things, gardening, a lot of different ways that creativity manifested that wasn't art as we know it maybe. So I started, that was about 14 years ago. I picked up the brushes and started oil painting. Of course, I'd painted in acrylics and watercolors and that before, but um, so picked that up and just started to really build my skills as an artist and focus on that first and foremost. I didn't think that I would maybe transition in being a full-time artist. And but that first 4 or 5 years of skill building and then focusing on the business then came after that, all while working. But I think that's important. You can when you're passionate about something, you can work all day full time at your job and then still put in, another 4 or 5 hours a night and not really think of it because it's a hobby at the same time. It's something I would do whether I'm paid for it or not. Um, but over time, I built my business. I started going into shows and competing in plein air events, which we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later here, and building my collector base. And so sales started to come in and grow and become more and more steady and predictable. And at some point there, I decided, I built that business up, my art business, and then I've transitioned to be full time as a painter, which can be scary. And I took a much longer path than a lot of people. I really admire some of these young people that just commit to it right from the start. Um, but it's my path, and I think however you get there, if it's part of you and you get to it at some point in your life, then good for you. It's leaving it on the table and never picking that up would be a big shame in life. And here I am.
Here you are, and you're getting interviewed about your career.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally I can relate to that and how, of course, listening to you, listening to other artists on podcasts, every path is so particular, and everyone has different needs. Some people might be lucky and they get, familial support in terms of, oh, I want to become an artist so I can actually like, do my stuff and have like a refuge where I can work. And then other people are like, I paint in my car during work breaks, or,
Yep.
like that's how it is. And then if you really, really want it, then nothing's going to stop you. Um, and you got to, like you said, you got to pay the bills, especially if you have a wife and kids, a house like to pay for. There's a lot of stuff that, it's, when you're an artist, it's not just you. If you have like a partner, obviously you have to take care of that as well. You have to take care of that relationship and make sure that your needs are being met, their needs are being met, both your needs are being met.
All
So there's
right.
a lot that comes into play. Yeah. Yeah. So I find it admirable that, you had that moment where you're like, I can't live like this anymore. I miss painting. I gotta paint. Which actually it makes me curious to know, because in those first 5 years, did you just immediately go out doing plein air, or how did that work
Mm.
for you? Because again, I think your plein air skills are absolutely amazing. So I'm very curious to hear how you developed that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. because I didn't. I started in the studio,
Mm.
and I struggled with finding things to paint, looking for photographs or inspiration. And then when I would get something I was trying to paint, maybe I was trying to copy and, replicate the photograph. And if I tried to take it more to a creative place, the work, than just copying a photograph, I would get stuck in analysis paralysis, mixing colors like just to the perfect tone and shade and value and that kind of thing. And it was really analysis paralysis. And I think that my work wasn't progressing and I was getting frustrated. It was too detailed. It just wasn't where I wanted to go. And I don't remember how plein air came about, although Plein Air Artists of Colorado, or PAC, is a group we have in Colorado, and they get out and paint. So early on, I found them somehow and joined them and started going out to, they had a weekly paint out. And as my work schedule allowed, I would join them and start to paint. And some of the artists that I liked at the time were, like Matt Smith, for example, painting plein air a lot. And I think that's what introduced me to it. Um, and some of my friends are definitely into it. A lot of my friends are into it. Most of my friends are into it. But I found that going out and painting on location, you're trying to beat the light, right? And so I didn't have time to do all of the mixing and the analysis paralysis. You just have to go. And as uncomfortable as that can be, it's the thing that got me off the dime and changed my painting, really, in the studio. Now I've got that muscle memory. I know how to mix colors. I don't really think so much about that anymore. It's more relational, on the painting, how things are working, tone to tone, color to color.
Yeah.
Um, but the plein air painting definitely, one, you just go out, you find things that inspire you, whether it's a little bit of light, and I think it's all coming down to painting light, really. But you find that thing and you jump in on it, and you rarely get it all right, especially early on. But you start to build that library in your mind of different things that you've seen, effects about, once you start to see reflected light for the first time in an object, then it's, wow, that was there the whole time. I didn't notice that. So though that observational skill, plein air really, gives it a workout and built that for me. And yeah, so that's how I got into plein air. And it really is the genesis of my work. Most of my work starts as a plein air sketch or ideas, or maybe a couple of paintings I've done plein air, and I take the colors from one and the composition from another, and I'll put those together for a larger studio piece. I do paint in the studio. Now I
Mhm.
don't, always paint outside, but I paint outside most of the year. And even when the weather is absolutely terrible, I spent a week up in Rocky Mountain National Park in January, or yeah, January-ish this year, which is just an hour away from me. But I rented a cabin up there so I could just go out all day, focus on that. I love doing that kind of thing. And I went out and it was like 12 degrees below zero and the wind was blowing. The backpack was weighting down my tripod, and the wind's just blowing at me. But I thought, while I did think, okay, this is a little extreme. What am I doing out here? What it really comes down to is I was able to study and capture just another face of Mother Nature, right? How many paintings do you see on the wall in the gallery of a snow squall coming in, right? So while it was kind of miserable, it's fun too. It's a challenge. I think I push myself that way. But I've also got that experience actually witnessing and trying to capture some of those effects that are just amazing. I wouldn't be able to dream up in the studio. And now I have two small 8 by 10 plein airs that are, just a great jumping off point, because I look at them and it takes me back to the sensing and the feeling and the observing in that moment, even the wind burn and the chapped lips and all of that, right? But when I paint the larger studio piece, that's what I'm after, is I want to get back to that feeling that I had. I rarely will use a photograph as my reference when I get back. It's oftentimes just the plein air work. The exception is if I'm painting a mountain peak, for example, that other collectors will know. Like we have Long's Peak here in Colorado. If I don't paint Long's Peak correct, there's a whole bunch of people that will call me on that. So I'll make sure I got the outline and that kind of thing. But within that, I'm really painting, I'll start with my plein air piece and I'll get it to a point where, I've got the bigger piece going. And oftentimes I'll just abandon any reference and start to see where that painting's going and develop the mood. And once I have that feeling, when I look at the piece, I get that feeling that I had when I was before the scene, then I know I'm, you know, it's not a slam dunk at that point, but I know I'm in the right track and I have a high probability of getting the painting that I envision out of it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you mentioned a bunch of really wonderful things because, first of all, of course, the importance of joining other artists, right? Being around other artists. One for learning, two for motivation, because of course there's nothing more um contagious than being around other people who really love to paint. And that makes it so much easier to just be like, oh, they're doing something and they're enjoying it, and I want to enjoy it too. So I want to try it. So I think that's important, for anyone out there who maybe is struggling with that. It's, join artists, find local artists. And then I really, really love the image of you going out into the snow with your bag and like just fighting the wind, because it really highlights how every day is beautiful, and it doesn't matter how quote unquote terrible the weather is. There's always some beauty that you can find in every day. Like for me, like there's a beauty in an overcast day that a sunny day might not have, and there's a beauty in an
Right.
overcast snowy day that a rainy day might not have. Like there's so many different days to wander at,
Oh,
so
absolutely. And you can
yeah.
paint the exact same scene and get a different painting every day because of the light. Silvery
Yeah.
light of a nice overcast day or those hard crisp shadows on a sunny day, blue sky day here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the humidity is totally different. So that'll totally change, the way you might perceive a shadow on something. If it's a particularly humid day, you might have like a more of like, I don't know if you've ever like felt that, where like you're out and you feel the moisture in the air, like
Oh
in
yeah.
your face or in, and then suddenly the painting itself, like there's a way to capture that. Versus like a very dry day. It feels like the colors are more pale, maybe. Is There's less, I don't know, there's something
You
in
can
that.
feel it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if you can feel it in the art, the artist did something great, right? They were there.
Exactly.
I don't think you can
Yes.
do that so well with a photograph.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you have this beautiful painting of like these trees and a snowbank in a river, and the light streaming in, and it just feels like such a crisp, cold morning to me
Good.
when I look at it. Yeah. I feel like that's exactly what you were feeling that day.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I gotta look for your paintings of that storm, because I think that's something I really want to see. The snowy, cold day that, we don't see. Like you said, I think it is very true that we usually see paintings of like beautiful days and like beautiful nights, which I love nocturnes. I'm a sucker for a good nocturne, which you
Hmm.
have some, and I'm like, yes, I
All
love
right.
it. Yeah. But yeah, there's something more to capture. It isn't just like the beautiful day or the beautiful evening. It's like there's a whole breadth of personality within every single day on Earth. It's
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So I love that you mentioned that. And of course your process. I like the idea that you do still use your references, but then maybe that'll evolve into an imagined painting instead of like perfectly capturing something that's there, because that's like, to me as an artist, that's like the follow-up step after those first few years of investigation and learning. Then it becomes, okay, now I can capture the thing, and then it becomes, okay, now I can do whatever I want, which is
Yeah.
that complete cycle that a lot of artists really want to reach.
How to make an artistic statement rather than a copyright.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like one of my favorite sayings that I like to say. I mean, I don't take credit for it. I think I never heard anybody else say it, but I like to be a poet rather than a reporter when I'm out there.
Mhm.
It's too easy to try to be a reporter and you just get stuck in the details and mired down in that and you don't end up with a painting.
Yeah.
So it's okay to move a tree and to change a color temperature and set a mood, What's the poetry of the moment?
Yeah. And again, that's all based on that previous observation, right? That repertoire of past paintings that you've already built up, in the past that inform that intuition to be able to then choose to do whatever you want, which
Yep.
amazing, amazing. Gosh, I keep saying it every time, but I gotta try plein air. But again, whew,
Oh, yeah.
whew, it's scary. Well, actually, what advice would you give to someone who wants to improve at the skill of painting?
Well, yeah, I think paint from life, no matter where you're at, if it's in your studio, you need to start there because a camera, unless you're a really great photographer, which I'm not, the nuances of light on the form, you really need to observe from life. And one thing that I learned that I really didn't, a lot of the art that I loved and growing up, were portraits and figurative work. And um, Shishkin, for example, who you have as your background there, I love the work, but I was never really drawn to it. I'm amazed by how it's done, right? Like, how did he do that? But it's not what I want to paint. So, my advice, I guess, back to the question, is to paint from life and really study. And where I was going with the figurative and portraiture versus landscape is that the trees in your background there, for example, they're formed just like a face or a human, right? The concepts and how you model light on form are the exact same. Your color mixtures might be a little different, but it's about, relative mixtures and studying how light falls off of a form or, informs what the form actually is doing. And, once you are out there and you observe from life, you start to see these things, you realize that. And so I think getting out there and painting from life is very important. And also not putting so much pressure on yourself to make finished work. It's, it can just be a heavy burden on your shoulder. Like you never get out there, you never do it because you think, I've got all of this other stuff to do. And there was a period of time where I would, just waste time procrastinating because I would plan to paint, I'd plan to do this, I'd work to set things up, I'd just go all through all the motions to get to painting, but then I would wear myself out. I wouldn't have any energy to actually do the painting. So on that thread, I would say it's a great idea, no matter where or how small of a spot, have a space where your materials are set up and ready to go. If you have them all in drawers and you don't have any place to paint, just the activity of getting all that together can drain your creative energy. So if you have a place and you don't have to paint, outdoors necessarily, but let's say you've got a little spot in your garage or a basement or something, just set up a panel, get a palette there, have your paints ready, some brushes, all of that kind of thing. And then when the inspiration strikes, you can go out there. Now, if you're trying to be a professional, you can't wait for the inspiration. You just need to pick up the brushes and go every day. But I find that when I have a creative block, I'll just go out and mix paint on my palette. I'll take a couple of colors and I'll add white to it. And I'll just say, where could this go? Combination maybe that I haven't, it's not a go-to combination for me. And just getting that little bit of activity going and color mixing, then all of a sudden I'm into it. I find myself pulling out a panel, messing around, and then 3 or 4 hours are gone. So paint more often, and that's how I do it. And paint from life. For those would be the two things to, and painting from life will speed up your decision-making process, as I mentioned earlier. That would be my advice.
Oh, yeah, trial by fire, in my opinion, with plein air especially. But also, I would, I would also think that, just, because you mentioned I would set up everything and then I wouldn't do it. How much of that do you think is also fear?
Oh, all of it, probably. I mean, the procrastination is probably because of fear,
Yeah,
right? And so I would do all this other stuff as a way to procrastinate actually putting brush to canvas.
yeah,
And it's fear that, I put so much pressure on myself to make a great painting right away, right? I want to paint like Rembrandt or whatever. I'm not thinking, right? I mean, yeah, but we strive for greatness. We're not going to just say, I want to really get out there and do some mediocre work today.
oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But if we
But
take the
you're right.
pressure off ourselves a little bit, that's when you can get out of your head and really get into, creating from what's in you.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I really also resonate with the we all aim so, so high, which is fine. It's totally cool to aim high because, that's how you can set your goals and you can, like, figure out what direction you want to go in is by having, your sights set somewhere. But oftentimes if that sight is a little too high, I mean, like you said, Rembrandt, it's like, oh, painful. That's like, oh, the higher the sights are set, the harder it'll be to get there. So I think sometimes it is also good to give yourself some grace because you're learning, you're still figuring stuff out. You can still aim to meet Rembrandt, of course, or any other painter that you admire, but I think being gentle with yourself, it's like you can't it's like if you're like a 7-year-old kid and you're just doodling in your notebook, and telling that little kid like, how dare you even try to draw? You'll never be Rembrandt, right? That's like kind of like the same
Right.
feeling. And I think in part that's where that fear also stems from. It's that adult voice that's like trying to be realistic, but it's just hypercritical and it doesn't really help.
I find that if I don't put so much pressure on myself to create a great painting in the moment, especially early on. I mean, I do put pressure on myself to create a great painting every time. But on the front end of it, just say, this may or may not work out, and either way is okay. And then paint. And then on the back end, when you're done with that painting, then you say, all right, objectively, how can I make this better? What could I do incrementally on my next painting? Because that pulls you forward too. That gives you that forward momentum to say, there's always the next one. And I hope I never lose that because that's what fuels and drives me. I love to find the beauty in the world. And I'm also looking to take each painting a little bit further than the last. So it's a stepping stone.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And then also with oil paint, it's very forgiving, right? You wait for it to
Amazingly.
dry, and or you if you don't wait for it to dry, you just wipe everything off with a palette knife, you just rip it all off and you start over. I mean, there's really no reason to think, oh, this is a failed painting, I'm the worst person ever. It's like, no, just try again. Like there's no reason for you to give up on something unless it's really something that you weren't passionate about, right? Like maybe the specific view that you were trying to paint just wasn't really hitting the spot, and that's totally fine. Just rip it off, clean it off, wipe it off, do what you got to do, and start over because it's forgiving.
Amazingly so. And I didn't realize that when I started out. I really thought, oh my gosh, I've got to have solvents and mediums and all this stuff. And now, of course, you just becomes part of your workflow. You don't think about it. But I think a lot of my students, they don't realize that either. They're very intimidated. Well, just, wipe it back or, toss that one aside and, if just scrape it down with your palette knife and let it dry and paint something else on top of it.
Yeah,
Later, it's
exactly.
easy.
Yes, yeah, and it's really funny because I would actually think that watercolors are less forgiving. But in actuality, you just spray that down with some water and you just wipe off or let it dry. And you have basically wiped off the quote unquote incorrect parts. Sure, you might not be able to
Ah,
completely salvage the white,
right.
but there is a little bit of wiggle room there. But I think oil paint is infinitely much more forgiving than watercolor, in that sense.
In my experience, yes.
Yeah, I feel like I'm between oil painting and watercolor. I think watercolor is very, very challenging, um, because since you mentioned you also used watercolor, it's one of those mediums where there's a lot of exactitude, but at the same time, a lot of allowing for chaos, which is such a fine balance.
Yeah, some of the greats are so good at that.
Yes.
Planned chaos.
Yeah, it's insane. That's a whole other can of worms compared
Right.
to oil painting, which I mean, I think oil painting is probably, in my opinion, even easier than acrylic, for example, because acrylic dries immediately. And for an oil painter who's, oh, well, I got to mix these colors and then, oh, okay, I got to grab some more, it's dry, it's gone.
Right. Right. You're all
Yeah,
done.
yeah, yeah. So I think oil painting is surprisingly easier than people would expect. But yeah. Yeah, insane, insane. And then now actually I really want to ask you a bit more about, when you decided to go into just full-time painting, that transition, right? You did mention that you were working a bit while you were transitioning, but like what was it like for you because you had such a time intensive daily job, right? Day job. How was it for you to start, tapering that off and to make time for painting?
Yeah, so I was a supply chain manager in high tech, and I worked in a global position. So I supported people around the world, and it was pretty time intensive. And I learned so many great skills in that, though. And my transition from it was really just based on the passion. I got to a point where, the phrase of "Are you working to live or living to work?" And that trade-off that I was giving up my art to do, for money basically, was appropriate for a time. But over time, then you realize your mortality a bit, and that trade-off, then the balance, the money, the aspect of it becomes a little less important. And um, I think I just realized that, well, of course, I was building my collector base, and so I was seeing more and more sales. And I realized that, while I'm working full time, I'm also selling enough work. I'm selling enough work to earn the income of a minimum wage over a year on on a part-time basis. So if I really put the time and energy into it, then I should be able to make a living at it. Now, maybe not the living I'm making in the high tech sphere, right? But over that period of time while I was working both, I tried to put away into my retirement, save up money so that I've got a cushion. I do like the life that bought me. Um, and just to decide, I think it's important to decide, do you really want to make art your business? Or do you want to keep it as a hobby? You may think I want to be a professional artist, but maybe you're more comfortable with it as your hobby. And hobby can have kind of a negative connotation to it in this space. And I don't think that it should. I don't know what another word would be for it, but maybe you don't have to be relying on sales of your art to make your mortgage and to put food on the table. But for me, I just realized that I was giving up too much. I was having to say no to opportunities in the art space, basically. For example, working full time, I couldn't have multiple galleries because I just can't generate enough work to keep them stocked. And I don't have the time to be delivering art and shipping art to galleries and then going and picking up unsold paintings. That would be the worst case scenario, is that I'm just going back and forth using all my time in that space. So I have one gallery and they've done great for me. And actually this year I'm going to branch out and do some more because I've got that bandwidth now. Um, but for me, in that time when I was working full time as well, I was focusing on improving my skills, making sellable work. But that's not the reason I would paint. But I want the quality that people are willing to buy. As a businessman, that's a metric for me. If people are buying and putting their hard-earned money into my art, I think that's a measure of how well I'm doing in what I'm creating. Is my work authentic? Is it connecting with people? And do I have the systems in place as a business then to collect those collectors and manage those relationships? So a lot of my sales began direct. So I would enter shows, of course, go to competitions, and I would sell work in those events. But I wasn't committed to maybe that gallery that the event was showing in or whatever. But I might sell a piece there, but I've also found that people find my work there and then contact me directly wanting to buy something else. And because I was selling direct, then I would capture all that information. And that has become really, my gold mine to go back to, because my collectors are buying, our collectors are buying the artist. They're buying us as well as the art a lot of times. Now, sometimes you sell a painting and it's a one-off and they don't really know or care about who you are. But a lot of my collectors, they love the work and they connect with it. That's first, right? And it's just a sidebar on this. I would just say that I when you go to events and you have somebody see, a patron see your work, and when you see them connect with it, it's such a magical experience. It's a full circle for an artist. Um, and what I realized over the years is that people connect with a painting because for me, when I'm outdoors painting, I find something that resonates with me. It's touching me. Like I don't know what it is, but I'm drawn to that light effect or that landscape or whatever it is. And so if I authentically try to capture that and put my own response into that, the end painting then connects with somebody on a deep, deep level. And I think it's because it's a shared memory. So I'm capturing an experience and that resonates with a memory that they've had in their life. I've heard so many stories and it's just really amazing because you find people that you total strangers. So I do paint on location a lot, right? And I'm not shy to paint in front of a bunch of people. Well, a lot of times let's say I'm painting in the mountains and I'm on a trail, 10 people will go by. 8 of them will just keep going and not even notice you're there or think you're, wonder about you. But 2 of them might stop. And those 2 people are your people. So don't worry about pleasing the 8 that went by. Wish them a good, hike for the day or whatever, metaphorically. And focus on the 2 that are your people, your tribe. Because they may not be artists, but they're connecting. They're interested in what you're doing. They're interested in your work. And so often people just have a real emotional connection and response to my art. And I was blown away by that to begin with. So uh, capturing that and developing that is really important. And so back to the transition of this, I started selling the work directly. And people might buy a small painting to begin with, but these people that connect with me and the art have been repeat buyers. So I've got multiple people that buy paintings over time. And sometimes it might be 2 or 3 years in between, and then this person pops up again. But I always try to keep that contact list, fresh and green and active. I do that through my newsletter and my website, my FASA website has been, that was the whole vehicle for me to make these sales, right? It was something to showcase the work, to put it out there, but um, I'll come back to that in a little bit. But keeping these contacts with the people that bought the work direct and being able to sell directly was really how I built the business while I was working full time. And, they're a great source of encouragement. And I try not to just use them for sales. I try to add value. I try to understand them. So many of them have become good friends. Um, and it really amazes me how quickly you can bond with somebody over a piece of art.
For sure. Yeah. If you've been enjoying the podcast and also want to be able to ask our guests live questions, then you might want to join our monthly BoldBrush Live webinars, where our guest artists discuss marketing tips, share inspiring stories, and answer your burning questions in real time. Whether you're a seasoned painter or just starting a creative journey, this is your chance to connect, learn, and spark new ideas. And whether you're stuck on a canvas or building your creative business, this is where breakthroughs happen. Don't miss out. Ignite your passion and transform your art practice by joining us. Our next BoldBrush Live webinar is coming up on May 22nd with our special guest, Sarah Sedgwick. You can find the sign-up link in the show notes. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic. And the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by FASO. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day by day, step by step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So, if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's FASO.com/podcast.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because you mentioned a couple things there that are worth noting, right? First of which, of course, is if someone's choosing between doing this as a full-time career versus a hobby, right? I feel like the big thing is how fulfilled do you feel with your day job, right? Is your day job fulfilling enough, and maybe you also feel somewhat fulfilled with painting? Sure. But if you, like you, right, with your day job, you probably felt very unfulfilled. Like, yeah, the money's nice, but there's the payoff of I don't feel fulfilled in life. I don't feel fully sparkly in life. I don't feel like I'm enjoying it. And I don't want to have to wait until, maybe 20, 30 years from now when I feel like I have time to do it. I don't want to wait, right? And I think that's one of the biggest factors is fulfillment. Yeah, and then I think that it's really interesting because you mentioned the awe-inspiring quality of the places that you go to. And that really reminds me of this term called the sublime, right?
Mm.
Where we're seeking out the sublime, which is anything that's like awe-inspiring and it makes you feel this amazing, like, oh my gosh, like there's something more. There's something that makes me feel like this tiny speck. And I just feel like I'm part of this bigger thing. And I find that I can definitely relate to that, finding the sublime.
That's a
And it's
great
so
word.
yeah, it's a beautiful word. I love that word so much. And I think, it's it's something to aim for because you can find a sublime, just as you can find it in the landscape, right? You can find it in figurative work, you can find it in other aspects, right? So for listeners who might be like, it's not just a landscape work, of course. But yeah, and I love the metaphor you gave of like, the eight hikers who just passed by. Because sometimes I think, especially at the beginning of our careers, we might feel a little bit upset or sad because oh, those eight people walked past. Like, yeah, I got these two, but those eight people didn't care. It's like, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's okay. You can't sell to everyone, and that's fine. Um, which of course you're very well versed in that as, someone who studied business, that you can't sell to everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Find
Yeah.
your niche, be authentic. I think that's the most important thing is for artists, we just be authentic. Paint the
Yeah.
things you love and you'll find your right people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's you just reminded me too, because of course the business side is really important, right? We want to pay the bills, we want to make a living from it, right? But then of course the primary thing is to paint what you love, like you said, that authentic, this is what I want to capture, this is what I want to share with the world, this is how I want to add value to the world.
Right.
And then the secondary part is okay, how, like, what is something that people would like for example, I think last time I asked you, which is I think now a good moment to bring it up, right? What about the size of paintings, right? There's also that aspect. Not everyone has the wall space for a giant painting,
Right.
and that really also affects sales. So like, in your work, do you find that there's like a size of paintings also that is more common to sell, or
It's interesting. I paint a lot of smaller pieces, 8 10s, 9 12s, 12 16 type of sizes when I paint on location plein air. Just because that's what I'm not a fast painter. In fact, some of my friends, you know who you are, would chide me for being a really slow painter. But anyway, I paint on the smaller side, plein air, and galleries. A lot of galleries will ask for really big works because they do sell big works, but they don't always sell big works. So um, I I think to answer your question, because I sell direct for a lot of my work, And sometimes people don't see their first piece that they buy in person before they buy it. They're on my website, right? So I try to get the best representation in my photograph of the work and all of that. But somebody will lay out a few $100 for a small original, and then when they get it and they like it, they'll buy more. Maybe that's their price point, and they're always buying the smaller pieces, and that's fine too. Um, but the more they become familiar with, who I am, the product that I'm giving, the quality, my ethos, all of that, they will buy bigger pieces and they feel more comfortable spending more money sight unseen or commissioning me for something. So I would say that's like 18 by 24 and smaller is very easy. Well, I shouldn't say easy, it still work, but easier for me to sell direct. Um, Beyond that, I think typically it's better for a gallery to handle for a number of reasons. People want to get up close with those larger paintings and they're paying thousands of dollars for it, rightfully so. You generally have a little more frame presentation and weight and size, and so shipping and handling all of those things directly is more than I want to do. And the gallery is set up to do that. A lot of times they're selling to a local market and the person's buying that and carrying it away anyway. But I there are high-end large commissions for big homes. There's no shortage of those in some of our mountain towns here. But I think that the bread and butter is in paintings that are affordable to, maybe more of the masses, not, the art-loving masses, right? Because they don't have the wall space. A lot of collectors have just run out of wall space. And one of the neat things is knowing these collectors, I get invited into their homes to see their art. They love to talk about their art. So if you get to do that, kind of take mental notes, like how are they hanging art? What kind of framing do they like? What are they concerned about when they get a piece from an artist? Man, you can glean a lot from going into a collector's home. But there are a lot of solid collectors, artists included. I've got my art's primarily on these walls back here because I do these, kind of videos and stuff. But I've got works from other artists as well. I love to collect. And so there's a lot more people that can afford a $500 to $1,000 painting. And then, there's shows and there's galleries that can sell, more of the work in the $2,000 to $5,000 range. And then I think there's kind of a limited market, maybe, I shouldn't say, but for me at least, limited market or limited houses and collections that can handle these 48 by 48 and larger type of paintings. So, but I can't paint a lot of those either. So the mix, works out. I think what's important is to have a little bit in each of those categories. And from volume, to answer your question, the volume, um, is higher at the lower size or the smaller size, lower price point, and it tapers off the higher you go, the larger size and higher price.
Wow. Wow. A lot of food for thought there
That was a lot,
because
sorry.
no, I love it because it really also sparks that idea of like, okay, where is there like a really nice sweet spot in terms of the types of paintings that maybe I want to do, right? Not just me personally, but any listener who's considering like, okay, this is the type of work I like. How can I best, make it so that it's maybe a little easier for me to sell a couple, less expensive, smaller pieces but still have, sold some instead of just making one big, really long-term painting, right? Because that's the other aspect. If you're a slow painter, it isn't very convenient for you to spend a year on a painting because you need to eat that whole year and you need to pay your rent for that whole year, unless, of course, you have a day job, which is the other option. So, finding that balance of the income and production, right? Like not every artist has the same pacing, right? Some artists are really lightning fast painters and some artists, like you or me, actually, I'm quite a slow painter, like to take their time. And that pressure just doesn't work, one for the creative aspect and two for the practical aspect, right? So that's a really interesting trade-off to also be considering as an artist, the production speed versus you know the size of work and then the income side.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and one other point I'd make here is that as a plein air painter, it is maybe I found myself getting too comfortable with small paintings.
Mm.
And it's important to try when you scale up from a 9 by 12, to a 30 by 40 or something like that, or an 8 by 10 to a 30 by 40, you make a lot of different decisions. Um, and so you need that practice, you need that ability to scale up because your small work might reel somebody in, but they want a bigger piece. And then some plein air painters have a difficulty scaling up and painting a large studio piece from it. And then the other point I'd make on that is I think it's for me it's been important. I found that by having larger, well-developed pieces that people say that's really beautiful, but it's a very high price point, maybe out of their price point, they have a little more faith in me as an artist and comfort maybe spending $600 on an 8 by 10. Even though $600, it wouldn't even imagine spending that on a little 8 by 10, right? That's a lot of money to some people. Um, but when they start to think, well, I could have a little piece of this artist's work for this versus the 15,000 for the big piece that I can never have. I can still have this painter on my wall. And so I would recommend that for anybody is do have some showcase work at the higher price point, still within a range of how you would price your paintings, right? Don't go crazy on the on how you price your larger work, but have those as examples of what you really can do. Galleries want that as well. They want to know that you're not just stuck in postcard sized paintings.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another excellent point, having that breadth of size and trying to test stuff out. And it's fine to have one larger piece and one larger piece and maybe some medium-sized pieces and maybe some smaller pieces and branch out a little bit because then you have a range of options as well of product sizes, quote unquote product
I
sizes.
hate to say product, but if you think about that, then you do think about the presentation
Yep.
overall because people are laying out their hard-earned money for this. You do have a
Mhm.
product.
Yeah.
It's a one of a kind and it should be beautiful and authentic. But
Mhm.
if you're going to sell your work, it's still a product. It needs to look great, have great presentation, and not be something that somebody regrets buying when they get it home.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I mentioned this the last time I spoke, but I want to mention it again, which is that it kind of makes it seem like what we do is much more akin to like luxury brands,
Mm, yep.
because everything we make is bespoke. It is one of a kind. It is a whole experience because a lot of people, wealthy people specifically, who buy very luxury brand things, they're not just buying the object; they're buying, like you said, the brand, right? And the brand in this case would be ourselves, us as an artist, which I think is even more uh I think much more authentic and much more beautiful than just like, oh yeah, it's like Louis Vuitton or Prada or something. It's more like, oh wow, this is by this one human being who
Right.
put their heart and soul into learning this craft for many years, and now I am purchasing a little piece of that experience that they have, which is it goes beyond, of course, just some random purse. But yeah, it's a whole thing. And actually I wanted to ask you also, do you find that there are other skills that you got from your previous job that you were able to carry over into painting?
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about this last night. So I'll start off with just bookkeeping and accounting, which seems kind of left field here, right? But it is one of those things, if you're going to be selling your work, then you need to have those skills. It doesn't have to be hard, but what's really hard is if you wait all year and you try to remember what happened.
Oof.
That's crazy. But there's a lot of tax advantages. Everything as an artist, if you're going to paint, all your materials, all your time, your travel expenses are all tax deductible. So if you're going to claim the income and pay taxes on that, you should look for and record and keep track of your deductions as well. But it can be a lot. So, but I do think about that as a business. This is my business here, and I try to keep up with that. I do keep up with it on a daily basis. It's part of my workflow. So, bookkeeping is, what I would say. Accounting scares people away, but it's bookkeeping, recording your
Mhm.
mileage, recording your sales, that kind of thing. So that came really natural to me. But so beyond that kind of, mired down in the weeds, bookkeeping stuff, I became comfortable speaking to large audiences, being accountable um, to goals and my communication, clarity in communication, promptness. Um, Having a product, like we said, that looks good. It looks good from the back. It's got certificate of authenticity. It's got the little things that people care about as a product, right? The frame's clean. It doesn't have little smudges of fingerprints. I can't tell you how many times I go into galleries and you see a frame full of fingerprints and dust, and the artist has just reused that thing over and over again, or somebody has. Um, you know, my business career taught me that those details matter. And another example is if you're in a show, or you're not even going to a gallery, but you're in a show and you've got to ship work. Follow the instructions. Be prompt replying to emails. The coordinator, whoever's putting that work in to mount that show, really appreciates that. And when you're somebody, you want them to say, "Gosh, you were a pleasure to work with." When you can do that, I have so many examples where my name was top of mind with somebody because of a good experience, right? And then when an opportunity came up, my name was in the top of their mind, and so I got another opportunity because they thought of me. So it's those details. We got to produce good work, but that's kind of the given. It's all the other things which can be a mountain of work, honestly. It is running a business. You got to think about it as a business. Try to be profitable. Try to build on whatever you're building. So you've got a network, you've got collector base, you've got social media following, all of these things. You're saying yes to opportunities. A lot of times I want to say no to an opportunity. Well, I don't really. There was a movie a few years ago, probably too long ago, but I think it was called Yes Man, and he couldn't say no to something, and it changed his life. That's kind of, the nutshell. I couldn't remember all the details, but um, to a point, you shouldn't just say yes to everything and you're chasing your tail, wasting all your time. But there are a lot of great opportunities that come up, and they might be scary because they push you out of your comfort zone. But you have to say yes because you never know where they're going to lead, who you're going to meet. I meet fascinating people when I travel to these shows or I plein air paint. Sometimes I pinch myself. I think, some of the people I know and have met and the experiences I've gotten to do, I never would have if I weren't like a TV personality or a rock star or something. I think, wow, this is amazing life. So it can be a great life as an artist. Get out there, be uncomfortable, be professional, and and then let's talk about goals for a minute. Goal setting is another thing I learned from business, and I think it can be a struggle for artists. There's a great book that I recommend by Gary Keller, and it's called The One Thing. And this book, the essence of it, I read it 2 or 3 times when, basically every year for a few years when I first found it, because I thought it was a great reminder. And it's about, how you set a goal for yourself, and the goal might be lofty, right? You want to be a self-supporting professional artist. Well, that's hard to undertake at one thing, and it seems daunting, and maybe you procrastinate because you don't know where to start. And so the whole concept of the one thing, which you should read because there's probably a lot more to it than I remember, but my key takeaway that changed my life in business, now this was years before doing art full time, but you take that thing, you have your goal, you got to know where you're going, first of all. But then every day when you get up, if you think about your goal and you think, well, what's one thing I could do today? The smallest little thing, it doesn't matter. What's that one thing I could do today to move me in that direction? And that should be one of your top priorities. And you should do that before you get sucked into the rest of your day. You have alignment where you want to go, and then you've got just one little thing, and you think, I could do that one thing today. Maybe it's like, I haven't sent a newsletter. I've never sent a newsletter. It intimidates me. Well, what's one thing I could do today? I go into my FASO website and look at that newsletter link in there and see what it takes. And just open that today. Maybe that's your one thing. So now you got past that scary thing. Well, tomorrow is, all right, what, maybe I'll just write down an outline of what a monthly email or newsletter would be. And what happens is success builds on success. You say, I already moved forward a little bit. I can do this. And pretty soon, we way underestimate we overestimate what we can do in the short term. And then we way underestimate what we can achieve in a long period of time or, long distance of time. And, it's just, I see that over and over in myself. If I move forward a little bit at a time on a regular basis toward a goal that I'm really sure of, and this is really, trying to review your goals every day. Do they align with where you are, who you want to be, where you want to be? And then thinking about that one thing. And, some days that one thing turns into five things. But you look back over a year and, you're amazed. I do a YouTube video or a YouTube channel, and I was looking at that. I pulled it up here. I have 78 videos on there. Now, if I, at the beginning of that, thought, okay, I need to start a YouTube and film 78 videos, I would be completely overwhelmed and never start. I can't even really believe that I've done 78 videos, which, isn't a whole lot. There's people with hundreds and hundreds, right? But for me, I look at that and I can barely even remember doing all of that work. It just seems like, how did it grow? But it was just doing one at a time, a little bit at a time, whatever I had the energy for. And, then back over time, that's something that's built on itself. People have subscribed, it gets more views, I'm reaching more people. I sell more art. I sell art from that kind of thing. So that's a great book. And definitely one of the skills that I got from business is goal setting and holding myself accountable to achieving results over a period of time. So setting a time frame for yourself and going after it as small in chunks as you need to for your work and life situation.
Wow. Yes, that sounds like an amazing book. And it's so true. I think what's really interesting too is the way that you mentioned this also kind of reminds me of how, we were talking about when you're starting a painting, you have this lofty goal, right? And that can be really overwhelming. And that fear again kicks in of like, oh, I want to do this, but it just seems so hard, right? So I think that definitely, is a type of mentality you can have. Within even the act of creation, right? It's like, well, I do want to paint like Rembrandt, but what can I start with that is more manageable or reachable and just breaking things down? And I totally agree. I mean, actually, I was thinking on how, I've been painting for 14 years, as a full-time artist. That's actually quite a short amount of time.
Right.
Yeah, and
I feel
it's
so much like a student still.
yeah, and honestly, that feeling I think stays forever. But what I find fascinating is because I had an instructor at the academy and he would say it takes at least 10 years at least. And and for some people it might be a little faster, for some people it might take longer, but with you mentioning like daily steps, just like one tiny thing, one thing a day, that I think is also that contributes to those 14 years being so short, but at the same time you're selling and you're making a living and you're enjoying it and you're still expanding and growing, because you've focused on, okay, what's the one thing, what's that little thing I can do today to like move forward, and it builds up, and before you know it, you've done a gajillion things in a year, and now you have more opportunities for the next year that just come up thanks to how you said success builds on success, and that's it's a message of hope.
Good, good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
And
yes,
it only needs to be a little success. It doesn't need to be huge success, right? So
exactly, small
just a
wins.
little win. It's a win for you. Nobody else knows it, but it was a win today. So celebrate that and be proud of yourself. And then tomorrow, go after it again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then of course, it's awesome too that you have your YouTube channel, because that's, as you're, making your paintings, right? You're making a painting, you're finishing a piece, but then also you're sharing that process with the world, and then also you might gain students, you might gain collectors, and then eventually, I haven't checked, but I don't know if your YouTube is monetized. Eventually, the YouTube gets monetized, and now you have
Right.
this tiny little passive income that's coming in while you're also selling your work and also doing all these other things, right?
Yep.
So it truly does, that little piece of work every day just builds up. And I think humans are really bad at exponentials for that reason. We're really
Mm.
bad at realizing how things can exponentially grow, because it just doesn't fit in our brain, but it truly is just one little thing.
And I always like to ask people, how did you find me? Whether it's a
Ah,
collector, I asked you this when you reached
yes.
out to me, right? And it fascinates me.
Mhm.
The an example I'd just give is a recent, I just picked up a commission for multiple paintings, right? And it's people that just live an hour away from me, but they found my work when they were visiting their son in California at a gallery in a show that I'm in. So, I'm just a local guy for them, really. And but they saw my painting in person and they like it, and they said, "Hey, this is a Colorado guy." They looked me up, they signed up for my email, and now I've got some business from them. So you never know. It's just such a great. And the YouTube channel I started because I was getting more requests to teach workshops. I do teach plein air workshops, but they take a lot of time, and I'm teaching 8 or 10 people because I don't like to have a huge crowd. I think I really want to have that individual attention that I give to my students. But there's only one of me, and the time is just, I can't, the trade-off in time is too much. So I started the YouTube channel as a way to just kind of do some live streams and that type of thing, and try to share how I paint, and then that became a community of people that tune in for those, and the followership grew. I did monetize eventually, although I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be my full-time job because yeah, it's not what I want to do. But I like to teach, I like to share, and so that's a community of its own. I've sold work to that community, but really, I try to give more than a trick I would pass along is to nurture your community, your collectors. Don't always look to just sell. Can I make a buck from this person? What can you give? How can and giving might just be taking an interest in their life, sending them a nice note, remembering a birthdays, texting them. I mean, I text with my collectors. I'm sure a lot of the, artists do as well, but that's a great thing to do because it doesn't really take anything. Everybody texts today. It's an easy thing. If you know somebody's birthday, text them a happy birthday. And so, seek to give some value rather than always just pulling value out of your audience, whether it's YouTube or your email list, your galleries, that kind of thing. Because um, this emotional bank um, concept, if you've heard of it, you can't keep making withdrawals out of your bank account without putting deposits in. So, I seek to make more deposits than withdrawals.
Wow. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Because again, that we're a person, our collectors are people, and it's good to remember that. Because yeah, we need money to live and we need money to have, food on the table or mortgage and everything, pay our rent. But at the end, it's a human being who purchased your work and who loves your work and who's a fan of you, and more than likely it could be easy to become friends with them because if they like your work and you made your work, you have something in common, right? There's always something in there.
Yeah.
And I have a very similar kind of friendship with one of my collectors where we text. We'll send memes or call him on his birthday. And it's not just like it's like, oh, it's great that he bought my piece, but also like I appreciate this person as a person too. Um,
Yep.
so that's a great point. I mean, one, yes, okay, as a business person, useful because client, but also there's that gray area of like, well, they could be a friend as well. Or they're supporting you in a nice monetary way, but also in that emotional side. So
Right, because it can
yeah,
be solitary being an artist.
yeah,
And, maybe we're more introverted. I'm a balance. I am an introvert. I feel very comfortable being introverted and alone in my studio and all of that. But, my business career kind of took me out of that and a forced extrovert. But now, I'm comfortable in both. So, I'd prefer it being introverted. But when you connect with people that love your work, it's a really easy friendship. You don't feel like you have to go out there. Sometimes that can be an energy drain having to be around people. But, when it's the right people, it's a real boost. So, artists and like-minded collectors and just doing great things in this world are a big source of energy for me.
yes, Totally. And the source of inspiration as well, because it's nice to be around other people who are just as excited and happy and you know, want to talk about all these beautiful things that we all see in the world as artists. And they appreciate it. And that, you know, it
Great
builds on
point.
itself.
It's
Yeah.
how we all see the world, I think, that brings us together.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And you mentioned actually that you teach workshops. Do you have any workshops coming up or any exhibitions that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, I do have a few things this year. As far as a workshop, I've got one coming up in at the end of July or August. My website has all of this, scottruthven.com. But I don't teach a lot of in-person workshops, maybe one a year, just because of the time commitment.
Yeah.
So I was invited to teach a workshop at the beginning of the Redstone plenary event here in Colorado. It's just up the road, I mean, it's in the state for me, so not a big deal. And so I was invited to participate in that, and I'll do a workshop on the front end. You can find details on my website about that. I do, sign up for shows. I'm so fortunate. I was juried into the Colorado Governor's Show for my 8th year. Um, and it is such a wonderful show. It's at the Loveland Museum, and it opens here on May 2nd, runs for a month. But, my gosh, the likes of Kwang Ho and Dan Sprick,
Oof.
and I'm just so blessed and overwhelmed to have my work hang in that kind of exhibit and to be able to get juried into that because it's tough. I fully expect not to get juried in every year. Um, makes the letdown easier if you don't, but
Mm.
you got to be realistic. So that one's coming up. Let's see, I've got Redstone plein air, just looking at my computer. Oh, and
Mhm.
then I'm going to go up to the Hamilton, Montana at the end of July. I have a piece in the American Impressionist Society's national show up there. So thankful for that too. And when I go to these shows, I try to go to them as much as possible. I mean, it is my job, but I'll also paint and do try to extend the trip out and do plein air pieces and paintings. So I'm planning to go up to Yellowstone and into Montana and of course through Wyoming on the way and paint a bunch of plein air and get a lot of inspiration for studio pieces when I get home. So that's at the end of July. Oh, and then I get invited to this thing called Snowmass Plein Air. And Snowmass is a little town right next to Aspen here in Colorado, which most people know. And their arts council puts together, this is the 3rd or 4th year, where they just invite Colorado artists. They invite about 20 of us. And we come up there for the week. They totally take care of us, put us up. Um, and we're just allowed to paint. And then we have a show at that following weekend at the end where we sell our work. And they introduce us to just a bunch of great collectors. I stay at a home with some collectors that are very prominent people, a huge collection of art, and I just it's one of those things where I pinch myself, like, how did I get to do this, right? Stay a week in Aspen for free, and then you get to sell work. So not to brag, but that's just one of those things that it's a lot of work. You go out there every day, you're up at sunrise or before, and you're coming in after dark, and you're trying to make your best work. But it's the opportunity and in the environment, and so anyway, that'll be coming up in August as well. Yeah, those are the top of mind things I've got coming up.
Awesome. Yeah, and that sounds amazing. I didn't even know about that. I think, you know, if there are listeners out there who are, you know, in Colorado or near Aspen, you know, they can also look into that and see how that works because, you know, it's a great opportunity. And again, like you said, you know, it's one of those things that like you pinch yourself when it happens. And, you know, if someone had told you maybe 10 years ago that that's an opportunity that would have crossed your path, like you would have been like, no way, what? So
Right.
it's I think for me it's really wonderful to hear, you know, you mentioned how you've had these wonderful opportunities come up. And it's obviously been a lot of work to even get to that point, to even get those opportunities. So I think
Right.
it's a huge win. It's a huge win.
Yeah, I never want to take it for granted.
Yes.
Always
Yes.
I always appreciate it like it might be the last time and keep pushing my work forward.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Oh, and then where can people see more of your work? I know you mentioned your website, but what's your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my YouTube channel. So everything on social, I kind of brand the same way, Scott Ruthven Fine Art. And, my website is scottruthven.com, but I've got a YouTube channel with a lot of instructional videos out there and a few about business, a little bit about my story. But really the things that people resonate with and really want to watch, I think, are the how-to videos and the plein air type of stuff. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Facebook a little less these days. I really like Instagram. I don't market through those at all, other than, just posting. I don't buy ads or anything like that. But if you want to keep up with my work on a daily basis, it's Instagram for sure, especially when I'm traveling. But I do keep my website up to date, and that's why I chose the FASO website. I've been probably a FASO member for at least 10 years, I would guess. I don't even know. It's been a long time. But I chose it because it's so easy to update. I don't need to know code or anything like that. So because it's easy to update and put links to sell my work, and I sell a lot of work directly, I really do keep my website up to date too. Helps me track
Awesome.
my inventory also if I just put it in there. When I have that at a gallery or something, I put a painting at a gallery, then I can say that it's at this gallery or at this show. And it's easier for me to keep track of all the work too. So
Yeah.
yeah, my website, Instagram, YouTube.
Perfect. Yes. And I will be including all of your links in the show notes as well for anyone who wants to go
Thanks.
right into it. Yeah, of course. And thank you so much, Scott. This has been food for thought. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's awesome that I could pick your brain about not just your beautiful work, but also business, because that's such an important thing.
Terrific. Thanks, Laura. I hope this is of value to a lot of artists out there.
Oh, yes. I truly think so. So yeah, so thank you so much.
Likewise, I appreciate it. Take care.
Of course.